Every single day, it seems like Zac Taylor's seat gets hotter and hotter. But the reality is, it shouldn't be. Zac Taylor not only should be, but needs to be the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals in 2020. Since taking over, Zac Taylor has completely transformed how this organization is viewed. It went from a team that nobody cared about, a team that was laughable, an organization that was laughable, to that's a team that fans and players respect. That's a team that other franchises do not want to see in the playoffs because, well, they're a good football team under Zac Taylor with Joe Burrow there at quarterback. When you look at the Bengals before Zac Taylor took over, like I said, they were a laughable team. They hadn't made the Super Bowl since 1988. They hadn't won or they hadn't gone to an AFC championship since 1988. They hadn't won a playoff game since 1990. They hired Marvin Lewis, that he was there for 16 years. He lost in the playoffs 7 times, 5 years in a row, never won a playoff game, and finally, the Bengals were able to move off of Marvin Lewis, and they brought Zac Taylor in and into a situation that was not really desirable. It wasn't a desirable situation to be a part of. But he goes in there and he transforms his team. They go to the AFC Championship twice, back-to-back years. Probably the first time in franchise history. They went to the Super Bowl for the first time since 1988. And yes, we can look at these past 3 seasons and say, yeah, they've struggled because they haven't made the playoffs, but they still had winning records to the past 3 years, going 9-8 in 2023 and in 2024. And this year, they're 4-10, eliminated from the playoffs, a bad year. But who missed the season this year? Joe Burrow, he missed 9 games. Who missed some games in 2023? Joe Burrow, he missed 7 games. It's hard to win football games when your quarterback, your starting quarterback, your elite level quarterback is out for that long. But aside the point, let's look at this season alone. What was Zac Taylor able to accomplish when Burrow was out? The record says not a lot, but the numbers don't lie. He executed a great offense. Joe Flacco was thrusted into a situation, and the Bengals had multiple 30-point games. They put up 40 points against the Bears. And yes, they went 1-2 in those scenarios, but Zac Taylor's side of the ball is offense, and he kept them afloat. You look at the defense side of the ball, and Lou Anarumo is a great defensive mind, and he couldn't make it work last year. You look at this season, and they brought in Al Golden, and Al Golden is not making it work this year. They had two different guys take their own chance at trying to transform this defense and get it going. But sometimes it's not an X's and O's problem. It's a Jimmy and Joe's problem. And so the reality is, why in the world would you fire Zac Taylor? Like, that's just asking for change to have change, but not all change is good change. He's a great offensive mind. He's had the most success of any head coach, I would go to say, in Bengals history in his time span here. And oh yeah, what's that third thing? Joe Burrow, a player who has been making all these cryptic statements in his press conferences. He likes Zac Taylor. He really likes Zac Taylor as a head coach, and I'm sure as a person. And when your star player, the best player that's ever stepped foot into a Cincinnati Bengals uniform, says, I like the coach, you don't fire the head coach. You don't do that, especially when his side of the ball is humming. The offense always has been. I mean, they've been top 10 in scoring offense 3 out of his past 5 seasons as the head coach. The 2 years he was in top 10, Joe Burrow missed some time. He missed a combined 16 games in that time span. But you do not fire a head coach when his side of the ball is great and when your star player, your face of the franchise, the player who made you change your name from Paul Brown Stadium to Paycor Stadium, likes Zac Taylor. You don't do that. You don't do that at all. It's a stupid decision. Who's the real problem though in this organization? Who needs to be moved off of? Probably Duke Toppin, the general manager for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I read somewhere that he isn't in charge of the contract talks, right? So when maybe the Jamar Chase contract or the T. Higgins contract or the Trey Hendrickson contract were being drawn out into this big deal, maybe he didn't have control of drawing up his exact contracts. And so, sure, we don't have to put all the blame on him, but he's still in charge of looking at the players and building this team. Draft picks are draft picks, okay? You either draft the right guy or you don't. And what have the Bengals done since Joe Burrow was selected? I don't think he's had many good draft selections. I know he hasn't. He had Jamar Chase, good draft selection. Hard to mess it up when Joe Burrow was a college teammate with him and wanted Jamar Chase. He drafted Joe Burrow. Okay, I'll give you credit, right? Tom Telesco, the GM of the Chargers, said, well, Tua was around, probably would have taken him over Herbert. So credit to taking the right quarterback. T. Higgins, great draft selection. Chase Brown, he's turned out pretty well. DJ Turner, we'll say he's playing great football, but he had a turbulent start to his career with the Bengals, but now he's looking like a great cornerback. Tell me every other player that he's drafted that has turned out well. Amarius Mims, solid. I'll give him that. That's six players since 2020. And they've had what, 30 to 40 draft picks? That's not a good general manager. You look at the free agent signings. Orlando Brown has been one of the worst left tackles in the National Football League. La'el Collins was terrible when he was signed. Geno Stone, terrible player. Daxon Hill, bad draft pick, just throwing that out there. It's just been bad free agent signing after bad free agent signing, bad draft selection after bad draft selection. The problem with this team is Duke Tobin. Because like I said, when you look at the defense side of the ball, there's just no one there. And it's not all about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and Joes. And who's in charge of doing that? The general manager. And we can say, well, he's not in charge of inking the contracts. You don't need to sign, these lucrative deals with rookies. There's a laid out plan that every single NFL franchise has to pay out given the draft picks they have. It's not that hard. It's not rocket science. So Duke Tobin is the problem with the Cincinnati Bengals. So if the Bengals were to trade, or not trade, but fire Zac Taylor, it'd be the dumbest decision the Bengals could possibly make, and one of the worst in franchise history.